Every neighborhood has a heartbeat, a place that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core. In Boston's historic North End, that place is Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. Boston Barber and Tattoo Company has become home to A-list Boston celebrities like Gordon Hayward, Milan Lucic, Brad Marchand, and Aaron Baines. Boston Barber and Tattoo is more than just Boston's most well-known corner barbershop. It's also a tourist attraction for the hundreds and thousands of people that visit the North End throughout the year. Boston Barber and Tattoo, a North End landmark that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core, located at 113 Salem Street. Today is Sunday, March 24th, 2019, and this is Celtics Beat here on CLNS Media, the leading online provider of audio video coverage of your Boston Celtics. Episode 307 featuring NBC Sports Boston's Kyle Draper is brought to you by betonline.ag. Get a 50% bonus on your first deposit by going to betonline.ag/CelticsBeat and using the promo code CLNS50 at checkout. Again, that's betonline.ag/CelticsBeat and use the promo code CLNS50, that's 50, at checkout. Evan Valenti filling in for Adam Kaufman here on Celtics Beat. Glad you guys are with me. Before we get to our amazing guest today, a couple of quick reminders. One, make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, all that fun stuff. Subscribe to CLNS Media on our YouTube page as well. And make sure you follow my guy on Twitter, Kyle Draper, my man, coming at you here on this Sunday. Kyle, I got to tell you, before we even get into the nitty-gritty of this podcast, I just got to commend you. I got to commend everybody in the studio, whether it's, Chris Mannix, or it's Forsberg, or it's Scal, or it's Max, the guys behind the cameras, the guys and gals doing lower thirds. You guys collectively as a group at NBC Sports Boston have been killing it this season. And on behalf of the Twitter family, we just want to thank you guys for making this season so enjoyable from just a production standpoint.
Oh, thanks so much, my man. Thanks for having me on the podcast. A lot of creative people behind the scenes, Max Letterman, Jim Aberdale, those guys. Our crew at NBC Sports Boston, man, it's obviously about the Celtics. It's about the games, but it's not life or death stuff. We like to have fun with it. We like to, joke around, kid around, man. So, as entertaining the product is on the floor, we try to make it entertaining off the court as well.
Oh, you guys crush it every single game. I love it. I look forward to every game, not even just the game. If I get a little pregame in, that's great, but post-game, I need it. I need reactions after. You guys are always great for that, and of course, embracing weird Celtics Twitter has been awesome for you guys. And what's great about you, Kyle, is you're a guy that kind of goes a little back and forth here. You do a little studio work. You've been on the sidelines inside TD Garden, but again, you do play-by-play for the C's when Gorman is not there. What's it like? Because I love Mike Gorman. I got to interview him last summer for the first time, and it was such an honor for me. How nervous were you filling in for the legendary Mike Gorman for the first time?
Oh, man, you mentioned it. The dude's a legend. He makes it look so easy. Think about it. I mean, he's been calling Celtics games for nearly 40 years. So people, and he said this during one of his commercials, people who are like nearly 50 years old, the only thing they know, the only voice of the Celtics they know on TV is Mike Gorman. And so having to fill in for him, it's a big challenge. And, doing the games that I've done has only given me a further appreciation, for how great he is, because it's hard. You mentioned it. I'll be the host. I'll do sidelines. I feel like I've found my voice in those roles, but play-by-play is a whole different animal. And so I'm just honored, man. It's always a challenge filling in for such a legend, but I'm enjoying it.
I got to do something, though. I love hearing you on play-by-play. I'm not going to lie. You and Scal on that West Coast trip were great. But I got to call you out for something, Kyle. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong here, please feel free to correct me. I don't think on that West Coast trip out where they played Golden State, the L.A. duo in Sacramento, yeah. I don't think I heard you go bang, bang, bang one time on those 4 games, and I'm a little upset about it.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but, you evolve as a play-by-play artist, right? I think Bang, Bang, Bang was like my first play-by-play game. you don't want me to have the same stuff in game one that I have, as I evolve in this profession.
Yeah, but I need it, though, Kyle. I need it. It's great.
Next time I'll give you a bang, bang, bang just for you, my friend.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah.
All that stuff is organic, bro. You can't pre-plan bang, bang, bang. It just has to come at you.
Oh, yeah, no. It's got to flow.
And it didn't on the West Coast.
I hear you. I was talking to, Adam Kaufman and I, every week we talk about, what do you have for our guests this week? Just, because we always plan our own show. But then, as a producer, you understand, like, getting a different point of view is always good. So I asked Adam this week, I said, hey, man, I'm interviewing Drapes this week. You got anything for me? And he goes, yeah, I got one. He goes, ask him if he's ever disagreed with me on anything, because normally he agrees with me on most things that I say. And I said, Adam, I don't know about that. He goes, just ask him point blank for me. Have you ever disagreed with anything that Adam Kaufman has ever said?
The thing is, I can't think of anything offhand, but
Kyle, call him out, too. If you think he's got something wrong, Kyle, call him out right now.
I mean, he's mostly wrong most of the time, right? I mean, him and his takes, So, yeah, I can't think of anything offhand, but I'm sure, if him and I were to debate something, he'd pick the wrong side, I'd pick the right side. That's just how it operates.
Yeah, I mean, I get you. I get you, kid. Now, with all that being done, right, I got one more, because I did do, throw out the Twitter. I'm interviewing Kyle Draper this week, and, if you have any questions, throw them at me. And I got a lot of the same response, and because it's such an overwhelming response, I have to ask this question. What does it take to become one of Kyle Draper's guys? Because you have a lot of guys out there, and I like there's certain criteria it takes to become a Kyle Draper guy. What is that?
You first of all, you got to be successful at whatever it is that you're doing,
No doubt.
And so if somebody has a bad game or does something bad, for that moment, he's not my guy. He's Scal's guy. So I don't know if you've ever noticed when I do the show, if somebody throws up a brick or is 0 for 10, I'll say, Scal, your boy, Jason Tatum, or whoever it may be. But when a guy goes off, he's my guy. That's just how it is. I only roll with winners, man. I only roll with winners, That's how, the Drake guy crew is. We only roll with positivity and with winners.
The list fluctuates is what you're telling me.
Exactly.
Right.
Depending on the game.
Right.
It can fluctuate within the same game. Somebody comes out and gets 15, that's my guy. But if he makes 3 bad turnovers in the second half, I'm like, dude, you're not my guy anymore. Come on now. You gotta redeem yourself now.
All right. Celtics Twitter, your prayers have been answered. Kyle has broken it down. I love it though. You know what? You gotta ebb and flow. Like you're saying, we gotta ebb and flow with play-by-play. You gotta ebb and flow with, my guy. And I think like this is your life. Like this is just your mantra, Kyle. You just ebb and flow constantly. Is this what it is?
Dude, yeah, sort of. And it's just sort of taking a life of its own. It's I started saying, my guy, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, Drapes, how many guys do you have? I'm like, well, hell, let me just run with this then, I'll just have fun with it. But, yeah, ebb and flow, go with the flow, man. Don't take life too seriously. That's for sure. Have fun with it.
Yeah, we all have our guys. I have guys that, like, I'm not really proud of anymore. Like, I have, like, these corners with guys. One of them being T-Rob, who's currently on the main Red Claws right now. Still holding out hope for that one. But, yeah, we all have guys. Come on, guys. Everybody has guys. And Kyle just has a couple more than we all do. Actually, now I need to get to actual stuff about the Celtics because it's been a tumultuous season, up and down, back and forth. And I remember, again, I watch, I try to watch as much post game as I can. I, got stuff to do around the house and get kind of crazy. But the other night, I was interested because you and Scal were doing post game after the Sacramento game, and they came back at home. And Scal asked you how you were feeling about the game, and you were not convinced, even though it was a win for the Seas, that the Seas were really playing that well. Where are you at right now with the current makeup, the current play of this team? They've been up and down. They've played harder recently in my estimation, but where are you at, Kyle?
No, they have played harder, and there's a better energy and a better spirit and a better vibe. But I've said this for the last month or so, and I still believe it. When you look at the top 4 teams in the East, the Celtics are right there with Milwaukee, Toronto, and Philly. And it wouldn't surprise me if any of those teams made it to the NBA Finals. I think they each have equal chances. I'm a little, disappointed in this season, no doubt about it. I had them winning 63 games. I thought everything was going to be great. And I'm still not sold that, they can make it past the second round, or that they will make it past the second round. And I mentioned this the other day on Celtics Post Up, our weekly show. We're hearing Kyrie saying he's going to sit out 2 or 3 games. Al's going to sit out 3 or 4 games down the stretch. And I'm not on board with that. I think this team needs to find its collective rhythm. And I don't think once the playoffs come, it's just going to automatically appear. And so I'd like to see the guys out there, if healthy, obviously, I'd like to see them out there playing to try and get this rhythm together, because right now they're still too inconsistent for me.
I feel that. And the one thing I'll piggyback off that, the inconsistency is killing me right now. But the one thing I will say recently, and we talk about Kyrie all the time, and honestly for me it's going to be too much, and I understand why Kyrie's kind of upset with everybody because everybody talks about him constantly and he just can't seem to get a break. But the one thing about Kyrie recently, Kyle, I think he's done a really good job at the beginning of games trying to set the tone immediately. Like you saw him the other night against Philly, come out right away and say, you know what, he had a couple of threes to start the game. I'm going to put my stamp on this game now. I'm going to try and motivate my guys now and then get them involved later. You saw it against Denver at home as well, the Isaiah Thomas tribute game, where, again, he came out, again, with one of my favorite guys, Jamal Murray, went off last time they played. He tried to make it a point, like, I'm coming after whoever wants to guard me this game, and trying to put his stamp on it right away. So in that capacity, I like the way Kyrie has taken it upon himself to say, look, I'm going to come out, I'm going to do my thing to start, get everybody going, and then we'll build from there. But the consistency stuff that you talk about is what's so frustrating. Whether it's play, you look at Marcus Morris, who was red hot at the beginning of the season, like white hot at the beginning of the season, even. Was the second best player on the team. Then all of a sudden now he's tapered off and is becoming more frustrating. You have guys like Aaron Baines, who's healthy, then hurt, and then healthy again, then hurt again. Now he's hurt again. You have Gordon Hayward back and forth. He's been up and down all season. I have a hard time criticizing Brad because there's been so much turmoil in terms of injuries, in terms of drama off the court. But at the end of the day, Kyle, Brad's kind of the guy that has to make these guys go. And I feel like there's an obvious move to be made here in terms of Morris. Like Morris, I feel like has brought the team down a little bit on both ends of the floor. Jaylen Brown on the flip side has uplifted his team a little bit. In your estimation, would you make a change at all with those two guys or any players on the team as we look towards the playoffs?
I don't know if I would, because I don't think first quarters have been the issue, getting off to a high start. You mentioned Kyrie has more than made up for, scoring in the first quarter. If you looked at December when they rattled off 8 in a row, a big reason why is because Kyrie came out and set the tone. I just think they need to get more from their bench. Sure, get more from Morris, but let's not act like when Morris was playing well, the Celtics were, beating anybody and everybody. Morris, like you said, for the first 2 to 3 months of the season was arguably the second best player on the team. But what did that really get them? It wasn't like they were vying for that number one spot playing well. So I think it's too simple to just say, oh, Morris isn't playing well, let's throw in Jaylen. That's not the issue. To me, the issue has been the bench, and we've seen it come through a little bit as of late. Jaylen Brown's playing a whole lot better, obviously, since January. Gordon Hayward is in and out of the lineup, so you can't even get it into a consistent flow. I think Terry Rozier has been wildly inconsistent, and that's a huge issue for the Celtics. And so I don't want to simplify it and say, oh, Jaylen Brown, put him in and take Morris out. That'll cure all your problems. I think, with guys in and out of the lineup, that's hurt them with the lack of a bench. Because if you look at it, the second quarter is really where they've struggled, this season. And so when Kyrie goes out, who's that other guy that's going to step up? Tatum, I think, has to be better. So I think everybody has to be better. We'll point to Morris, but let's not act like the Celtics were doing great when Morris was scoring early in the season.
Right. And one thing, what have we said all year long about the Celtics, right? This is a team that can contend with Golden State because of the depth of talent this team has 1 through 10. I mean, Golden State has the big three guys, and if you want to add Draymond to that, you can do that. But they have as much top-end talent as anybody else. But we look at, roster spots 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, where I believe most of the time championships are won with those guys. Boston's talent there is what was supposed to be the trump card. And yet here we are, we're in late March, we're going to be in early April. The playoffs are right around the corner, and yet your point is a good one, Kyle. This is a team that has no consistent player on their bench that can step up and really take over when Kyrie's done. Look at the team they just played. They just played the Clippers, right? Clippers have a guy that comes off their bench, Lou Williams, who should probably start, but is very comfortable coming off the bench, and lights it up and hits a bunch of these tough shots late. And if their starting unit can't get any rhythm going, they have a guy off the bench that can be an instant spark plug for them. And in this year, Rozier hasn't done it. Jaylen Brown has been probably the most reliable guy in that role. Hayward, when he plays well, that's when this team starts to really click. So to your point, Kyle, and I agree with you on this, the bench unit, if I'm Brad, and if I'm Danny, and if I'm anybody inside the front office or the coaching rooms or anything like that, I need this bench unit to just get a little bit of cohesion, because if that happens, you start looking at Toronto, you start looking at Milwaukee and saying, well, you know what? They might have Giannis or they might have Kawhi Leonard, but we have the other guys around Kyrie. And again, Kawhi is better than Kyrie. Giannis is better than Kyrie just because of their will on the defensive end. But we have the guys around Kyrie that'll make this work. And I'm with you. If this team cannot find a way to get any rhythm consistently from their bench unit, they're absolutely doomed, Kyle. And this season, it goes up in flames, and it feels like that, we had so much promise for this season. People, 60 wins, 68 wins, 67 wins, is going to go out in flames in 2 rounds. And it would feel like such a disappointment for everybody in Boston, considering how much success the city has had this entire season in terms of sports the last 365 days.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Kyrie has to be great, it feels like, for this Celtics team to win. And it's not supposed to be like that, because you mentioned it. We talked about that depth. One thing Brad can do is maybe stagger the lineups a little bit better. Go with your starting 5. Maybe bring Tatum out early and then bring him back in when Kyrie's like, who's your second offensive option? And I don't know if the Celtics have a clear-cut one right now. Is it Tatum? Are you really relying on a second-year player to be your second offensive option? And so you look at a team like Philly the other night. They don't.
Of course,
have
you picked Philly,
really, right?
Of course, you picked Philly.
Of course, I'm a Philly guy, but that was the last game. They don't have a bench, but what they have is 5 starters, and let's say 4. Let's take out Ben Simmons. 4 starters that can get you a bucket at any time. And what they do, and Brett Brown does, and I'm not a Brett Brown fan, trust me on that, but they have the ability to stagger their lineups where at any point you can have 2 of those starters in there, and those 2 starters can get buckets. Who's that guy other than Kyrie Irving that you keep in the game when Kyrie's out that can go out there and get you buckets? Tatum's been inconsistent. He's having a good season, but he's sort of been inconsistent. So somebody has to step up and be that guy when Kyrie's out.
I agree with you, and I think it has to be Tatum. And Tatum has been, everybody's favorite young player in the league by, depends on who you are, but he's in the top 3 or whatever. He's one of the most tradable assets on the market, but his 3-point percentage recently has dropped to an abysmal rate, especially when you consider how well he shot it from 3-point range as a rookie in the league. And I think I'm with you. It has to be Tatum. It's not Al Horford's game to really take over an offensive role, although he's been extremely good on the offensive end recently. It's not his mantra. It's not his mentality to take over a game like that. Morris wants to, but Morris has been throwing up bricks for the past couple of months. Brown can't do it from the bench. I think it has to be. I think you're right. I think the move is, how do we find a way to get Jason Tatum more engaged and more involved in this offense when Kyrie's off the floor? How we can make him a better focal point? Because again, you go back to not just last year, Game 7 of the NBA Eastern Conference Finals. Tatum's a guy going toe for toe with LeBron James in Game 7, and that's something that you wanted to build on in year 2. And we really haven't seen it. Like, I don't know if it's the way that the Celtics move their offense. I don't know if it's Brad telling people to focus on, but it doesn't feel like Jason Tatum is nearly aggressive enough when it comes to, finding and hunting a shot, especially when Kyrie's on the floor. But when he's off the floor, he's got to find a way to become a more, not, I guess dominance away, but a more aggressive player. I feel like that Tatum is trying too hard right now, because last year I think it was more of his role to be a more passive guy, right? To just fit into the offense, fit in the flow, and don't do anything that, is going to be overwhelming. I know he's second on the team in shots. He's got 13.2 shots per game. But I think there has to be more. I think we got to find a way, if I'm Brad, to take shots from some other guys and feed Tatum. Because in terms of talent, Kyle, I think he's he's, in terms of one-on-one scoring, probably without question their second best option.
Yeah, and I agree. And part of the issue is Brad gives everybody the green light, and so everybody feels like, they have the freedom to take the shot. But you do need sort of a pecking order, especially when Kyrie's out there. We know Kyrie's, the top offensive weapon. But is it Tatum that's it? Is it Gordon Hayward that we need to be more aggressive? One of those two guys, I would imagine, has to have stretches where they're the best player on the floor. And we saw that a lot last year from Tatum. This year, not as much. So I think the issue is when Kyrie goes out, are you going to be able to score points? But secondly, I want to bring up, and I asked Al Horford about this the other day, and he didn't agree with me, but I think their fourth quarter defense, the rating still says, they're a top 10 top 5 fourth quarter defense. But when you look at the eye test and the actual numbers, how many times have they given up 30 or more points in the fourth quarter? And Brad mentioned this during pregame the other day. At some point, you have to get a stop. And too many times this season than not, they haven't been able to do that. So I think that's an issue also with this Celtics team. Can they clamp down and actually get that stop? Obviously, Marcus Smart was out, in that Philly game, and I think he may have made a difference. But they need to start playing better fourth quarter defense also, I think.
And look at Morris at the end of that game. I mean, Morris was a train wreck defensively at the end of that game. He lost somebody backdoor, and it was pretty much game over from there. You're right. And this is a team that builds its mentality off its defense. They feed off their defense. And it's surprising to me only because, you put this team on paper and you're like, wow, that's an offensive team that's going to be really tough to guard. I hope their defense is, can kind of match up. When Hayward goes down, they revert immediately to, okay, now we're a defensive team that has to win games with their defense. And I feel like that maybe has been lost a little bit this season. I mean, they have good individual defenders. I mean, Marcus Smart is just insane. He's just probably, you want to talk about one of my guys, Kyle? Marcus Smart has always been one of my guys from the very beginning. Jason Tatum with his length can be a problem on defense. Jaylen Brown has been playing a lot better defense recently with the exception of a couple of brain farts he has scattered throughout the past couple of games. Aaron Baines, when he plays, is a great defensive player. Al Horford is a guy that can stretch it out in terms of, covering guys at the perimeter, but then recover back to the big in the middle. They have the pieces. It's just, again, it feels like concentration is their biggest issue right now, and focus at the end of games when they know they need to stop it. I just feel like they're not focused, Kyle.
No, I agree. And all it takes is a couple of possessions. You look at that Denver game, end of the third, beginning of the fourth, Jaylen Brown with those couple of, defensive lapses, gave Denver some new life. And I think, when we talk about consistency, not only consistency in play, but the consistent mental focus throughout, that's something this team hasn't had. And one of the issues, too, you mentioned how, they're ideally they should be a defensive-minded team, right? That's, in the past few years, it's all been about their defense. But I feel like more times than not, this team relies on its offense to get its defense going when it should be the other way around. When shots aren't falling, you can see the lack of focus. You can see the body language change. When they're making their threes and hitting shots, I feel like the intensity turns up, and it should be the other way around for the Celtics.
Quick break from Drapes to tell you today's show is brought to you by BetOnline.ag. Lots of good NBA games come this week to throw some money on. And I gotta be honest with you, you don't want me telling you at least spreads to bet on. I'm not great at spreads. I'm good at telling you who's gonna win. So you're gonna want to look at the money line if you're looking for anything in terms of gambling. Celtics specifically, they have the Spurs tonight. This is Sunday. The Spurs are playing really well right now. C's are not playing. They're playing okay. They're banged up, but the Spurs usually play them really well. And it usually ends up with a Celtics loss because Pop usually runs circles around Stevens every once in a while. So I would avoid that one, but C's play the Cavs on Tuesday. Lock in that money line and lock in the money line of the Pacers against the Celtics coming up on Friday. In terms of other NBA action around this week, because there are plenty of good games to gamble on, I'm looking at Tuesday night. I'm not, again, if you want to throw some money down on Bucks, Rockets, by all means do so. Love the Bucks there. Kings, Mavericks, automatic money give to the Kings. I love the Kings in that matchup. Pistons, Nuggets in Denver. I like the Nuggets there on Tuesday. Thursday, more games, of course. You want an automatic lock of a win. Take the Raptors over the Knicks. Easy money, folks. All of that, plus, of course, you have the great virtual casino at betonline.ag, okay? But make sure when you go and log in to your account or sign up for a new account, use the promo code CLNS50. That's 50, CLNS50 for that 50% bonus on your deposit when you sign in. Don't be left on the sidelines with all this excitement going on in the court. The virtual casino's going on, plus March Madness going on all throughout this month. Make some money all the time with March Madness. Like I also produced Jeff Goodman's show, right? Good and Plenty. We had SVP, Scott Van Pelt from ESPN on, and Jeff and Scott are just giving out lines and giving out money, basically. So sign up today. When you sign up, make sure you go to betonline.ag/CelticsBeat and use that promo code CLNS50, that's CLNS50, for a 50% bonus on your first deposit.
I want to continue with that Denver game because with all the BS with this team and with all the nonsense and with all the drama and all that stuff, you got to admit that night and the tribute for Isaiah Thomas was very special, no?
Oh, no doubt about it. And you know, when you look at, you know, we could say the last, 7 years of Celtics basketball, you know, the Isaiah Thomas years were the highlight. I mean, the king of the fourth, you know, making it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, that season he had his last full season where he's averaging 29 points. And, you know, he sort of really, you know, when we look at where this team is now, to me it started with Isaiah Thomas. I know people want to go back to the Brooklyn trade, but getting Isaiah Thomas and him playing at an all-star, all-NBA kind of level, that led to getting Al Horford. That led to signing Gordon Hayward. That led to trading for Kyrie. So all these things come, you know, that trade to get Isaiah Thomas, you know, to me is one of the best that Danny ever made because it sort of not only brought excitement back to the squad, it quickened the rebuild, it accelerated it, and then it also let you, you know, sign a free agent like Al, and also Isaiah Thomas was the key part in that trade for Kyrie. And so if you don't get Isaiah, I don't think you get to this point if you're the Celtics organization as soon as you did.
I miss him so much. I miss all the highlight stuff. I miss just the energy he brought all the time. My favorite game, and I know people will go to the one in the playoffs where he had 50 against the Wizards. My favorite one, it actually was the one earlier in the year in December, late December. He goes for 50, I think 54 against Miami with like 27 in the fourth quarter where he was unguardable. I think Floyd Mayweather was there that day, and I think he was fueling off the vibes from Floyd a little bit. But it was just such an awesome environment, and to watch him go against, you know, not just Hassan Whiteside, right? You have the games against the Jazz where he's taking on Rudy Gobert one-on-one, and he's taking on, like, the fearlessness that Isaiah plays with. And unfortunately, we don't get to see that right now because he's still coming back from injury. But the fearlessness that guy played with is something I think a lot of people, and just whether you're a fan of the Celtics or a casual NBA observer, love to watch. Like, that's the kind of stuff you want. A 5'8" guy, barely 5'8", right? A 5'8" guy going in there, attacking guys that are twice the size almost, and just saying, screw it, I'm gonna get to my spot, I'm gonna get my shot off, and there's nothing you can do about it. That was the stuff that made Isaiah Thomas a legend. And then all the stuff he played through this hip injury that has cost him 2 years of his career and over $100 million. I mean, let's be honest about it. Isaiah Thomas made one of the worst bets on himself in probably NBA history in terms of monetary value. Guy has cost himself over $100 million. And what was so cool about that night was that it felt like for a second that the fans, for once, could say thank you to Isaiah the way they wanted to. And I thought whoever put the video stuff together did a great job. Whoever does that with the Celtics did a great job. And it was such a special night for Boston that it really meant a lot to me. But what's funny to me is, Kyle, I threw this out on Twitter the other day, and I got a lot of flack for it. I got a lot of praise for it. It's interesting. I never created so much like drama on Twitter in my entire life. Who's a better leader in your mind, Kyrie Irving or Isaiah Thomas?
Oh, that's a tough question, right? Because, you know, I think when you look at Isaiah and what he was able to do, a lot of that was, you know, the perfect storm. You know, he was brought into a perfect situation. Brad Stevens and the Celtics allowed him to be who he is. Right now, you could argue you have better talent around Kyrie Irving. And so maybe Kyrie isn't like, trust me, Kyrie can go out there and average 40 points a game if he wanted to. Like, if the offense was designed that way. I think Kyrie's learning to be a leader. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's all about the final results. And so if Kyrie drags this team or gets this team to the Eastern Conference Finals, the same point Isaiah did, the results are the same. So it doesn't matter. I think, Kyrie's a bigger superstar, but the love affair that fans had during that 2.5 years that Isaiah Thomas was in Boston, I don't think we've seen that yet. I think people enjoy watching Kyrie, but I don't think people have that affection, that emotional connection with Kyrie yet. And I think that's the big difference.
The one thing I got caught up in watching a bunch of Isaiah Thomas clips that day. I mean, that just to get caught up in the whirlwinds. But one thing I did notice is at the end of games, like Isaiah, for as much as you want to talk about, him back up the Brinks truck and all that stuff, he was actually quite eloquent at the end of games. And I thought he did a great job of lifting up his teammates at the end of the games and talking about them and praising them in a way that sometimes it bugs me about Kyrie. Like sometimes he doesn't quite know exactly how to praise his teammates the right way, where Isaiah was more of a natural thing for him. But your point being these teams are way better than Isaiah's teams, and Kyrie has so much more to balance is one that I didn't really think about at the time. Now that I think about it, it's just so much harder to be a leader of a team that has so much talent on it. Like, you look around, right? You could put Jason Tatum on any rebuilding team, and he probably automatically just becomes the leader of the team because he's young. Everybody's pushing it that way. He's good. Everybody can latch on to that. He doesn't have that opportunity here. Or like a guy like Jaylen Brown, who's very cultural. He's out and doing, seminars and giving lectures at a Harvard Business School. He's so cultured, doing interviews with all these different magazines, getting all these publications. Like, he could be one of these guys. And yet it has to be Kyrie because we give it to the best player, right? That's who it's all about. Give it to the best player. That's got to be the leader of the team. When in reality, you look at some of the stuff that people say off the court, like Marcus Smart is a guy that seems to, like, on the court, bring that energy that the Celtics need. And off the court, it feels like Al Horford sometimes is that really quiet, like, do stuff behind closed doors, talk to you quietly when the cameras are off and nobody's looking. I feel like there's maybe a power riff on this team and that we quite haven't really dug into yet.
Yeah, I don't know about a power riff. I know you got guys who are looking to prove themselves on the floor, whether it's Terry, Jalen, or Jason. And so that's something you didn't have when Isaiah Thomas was there. When Isaiah Thomas had his team with the Celtics, you had a bunch of guys who, came from other teams who sort of had chips on their shoulders that, they were, they just wanted to prove they belonged in the NBA, the Jay Crowders of the world, the Jerebkos, and so they sort of allowed Isaiah to be a leader. But I will say, even back when Isaiah was here, you heard players talking about Marcus Smart being the heart and soul of the team. And, up until even last year, you heard people saying Marcus Smart is the heart and soul of this team. I think, with Kyrie, as great of a player as he is, he's in a different situation now because, like I said, Tatum feels like, you know what, I helped lead this team to Eastern Conference Finals Game 7. Rozier, Jaylen Brown. I mean, you got a lot of guys looking to make their mark in the NBA and show that they've taken that next step where maybe you didn't have that as much with Isaiah.
I'll get you out of here on this last question here, Drapes, because I know, time is precious here. But looking at the matchups here, Boston looks like they're going to draw Indiana. And then if they get past Indiana, looks like Milwaukee's the next on the horizon. In your estimation, this is the ideal scenario for Boston? Let Toronto and Philly, one of those guys, knock each other off, take on Milwaukee, who has Giannis, best player in the conference, no question. But outside of that, a lot of question marks there. You think this is setting up perfectly for Boston to maybe make a run?
Yeah, but, it's going to be tough no matter what. I will say the first-round matchup against Indiana, to me, is the most advantageous for the Celtics out of the other. Like, I'd rather them open with Indiana than have to play and go to Philly in the first round. So it is breaking well. Toronto has been the Celtics' kryptonite, but I'm still not 100% sold on the Raptors. Kyle Lowry's banged up right now. The bench, as great as it's been at times during the regular season, has sort of been up and down for the Raptors. This Milwaukee team scares me, although they're dealing with injuries right now. I think, people forget how good Bledsoe is, and I understand, Terry Rozier got the best of them last year in the playoffs. But let's not forget, if that Game 7 would have been in Milwaukee in the first round, there's a good chance the Bucks would have won that game. And so, in the dream scenario, this is the perfect, path to get to the NBA Finals. But it's by no stretch of the imagination, this isn't going to be easy. I mean, you're going to have to go into Milwaukee and beat Giannis. And let's be honest, Giannis has actually, look at this season, the Bucks own the head-to-head. You look at last season in the postseason. I mean, it went down to a Game 7. And so, let's not act like this Bucks team isn't for real. The Bucks will still be the favorite in a matchup against the Celtics. But I'd rather see them sooner than, let's say, see a Toronto who no doubt has the Celtics number.
That's going to do it for this episode with my guy, Kyle Draper. You can follow him on Twitter at Kyle Draper TV. You can see him all over the place on NBC Sports Boston. I almost threw Comcast out there. My bad. NBC Sports Boston. Kyle Draper's on pregame shows, on postgame live. He does play-by-play. He's the man of many talents. Kyle Draper, thank you very much. I appreciate the time, my man.
All right, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
And that will do it for this edition of Celtics Beat here on CLNS Media. I want to thank you guys out there, the greatest audience of all time, the Celtics Beat audience. You guys are the best people. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes, on Stitcher. Subscribe to CLNS's YouTube page. There's like 20,000 of you at this point. You guys are all incredible. I can't believe there's 20,000 of you. Keep spreading the word, though. We're going to be all over the place with the playoffs. We're going to be at every game. We're going to be inside the locker rooms. We're going to be doing post-game reports with the Garden Report. We're all over the place with the playoffs, so stay tuned for that. Plus, coverage and all the other sports.
The Bucks will still be the favorite in a matchup against the Celtics, but I'd rather see them sooner than, let's say, see a Toronto who no doubt has the Celtics number.
That's going to do it for this episode with my guy, Kyle Draper. You can follow him on Twitter at Kyle Draper TV. You can see him all over the place on NBC Sports Boston. I almost threw Comcast out there. My bad. NBC Sports Boston. Kyle Draper's on pregame shows, on postgame live. He does play-by-play. He's the man of many talents. Kyle Draper.
The Bucks will still be the favorite in a matchup against the Celtics, but I'd rather see them sooner than, let's say, see a Toronto who no doubt has the Celtics number.
That's going to do it for this episode with my guy, Kyle Draper. You can follow him on Twitter at Kyle Draper TV. You can see him all over the place on NBC Sports Boston. I almost threw Comcast out there. My bad. NBC Sports Boston. Kyle Draper's on pregame shows, on postgame live. He does play-by-play. He's the man of many talents. Kyle Draper, thank you very much. I appreciate the time, my man.
All right, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
And that will do it for this edition of Celtics Beat here on CLNS Media. I want to thank you guys out there, the greatest audience of all time, the Celtics Beat audience. You guys are the best people. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes, on Stitcher. Subscribe to CLNS's YouTube page. There's like 20,000 of you at this point. You guys are all incredible. I can't believe there's 20,000 of you. Keep spreading the word, though. We're going to be all over the place with the playoffs. We're going to be at every game. We're going to be inside the locker rooms. We're going to be doing post-game reports with the Garden Report. We're all over the place with the playoffs, so stay tuned for that. Plus, coverage and all the other sports, Red Sox, Bruins, Patriots.